Okay, thank you, George, for the introduction. Uh, Appreciate the kind words. And I just want to start by saying some of you may have heard this talk for Virtual World's Best Practice in Education last month. So it is a repeat for those of you that weren't able to make it. You'll be able to hear what I said. For those of you that did come and hear me speak in April, there is some new material that I'm going to be adding, new projects that I'm working on, and also want to get some feedback. Okay, so just a little bit of an introduction. Um, I'm a research associate at the Virginia Museum of Natural History. I'm on the adjunct faculty at Virginia Tech in their geoscience department. I taught for 33 years at the high school level at Frank County High School in Southwest Virginia, and I taught for about 18 years geology at the college level. I also worked and ran a computer club at my high school, and I run a company called Educational Virtual Worlds. So that's my background, and I think Shiloh sent out my bio, so I'm not going to say much more about that. All right, a little bit about George asked me to say something about comments, and I do have the local chat open. So if you have any questions, comments that you want to post during this presentation, it should run for about a half an hour. Don't have a problem at all about that. Happy to. I want to know what you're interested in, and there's a range of topics. We've got museums, we've got education at the K-12, college and university level, and we've got the tech that's involved. So you don't have to wait for the end of the talk. If there's something on your mind, please feel free to bring it up. All right, for those of you who didn't attend Virtual World's Best Practice Education Conference last year, I presented the first part of a virtual reality presentation. I went out to Denver, Colorado in 2022 and talked to them about creating virtual reality simulations for Dinosaur Ridge. It's where Dinosaur Ridge is an iconic dinosaur locality in New York, in the United States. When in the 1880s, when people first started taking the Transcontinental Railroad west, one of the first stops they did was in Morrison, Colorado, and they found lots of dinosaur bones. I mean, tons of dinosaur bones. At one point, they had 15 active quarries, and they were shipping them east on the railways. So it was a real honor to work with the folks at Dinosaur Ridge. And so I created some virtual reality simulations. I ran it at the Virginia Museum of Natural History and also at the high school that I taught at, and came up with the following key conclusions in 23. Even though VR simulations are popular, 80% of elementary and high school age students like VR. They prefer it over traditional elementary instruction. Students' understanding of Jurassic animals' environments increased by 32% when used in conjunction with traditional instruction. So, in short, I felt that VR, virtual reality, the headset, and simulations were valuable tools to be used in education. In 2024, which was last year, of course, I decided to switch from the Jurassic, which was about 150 million years ago, to the Cretaceous, 66 million years ago. There are a lot more dinosaurs, a lot more interesting environments developed during the late Cretaceous. They start looking more like what we see today. And this is a picture from the homepage of my website. And if you have any questions after this talk, feel free to contact me. My contact information is on that website, evwllc.com. I'm going to put that up again. It'll also have my email address, which is rather long, but I love getting comments after talks if you have some other ideas that you want to talk about. The main tool that I use for creating VR simulations is Unity 3D. You just go to www.unity.com. If you want to play with it, there's a free download. And Unity is the reason it's called Unity is it's wonderful. You can bring in assets from a wide variety of resources, whether it's 3D models or sounds or whatever, okay, into this program. And then once you've created something, you can send it out to PCs, to Macs, to mobile mobile devices like Android or iPhone, to virtual reality. They're doing AR. So it's really a fantastic platform for creating and then sharing it with a wide range of devices and people. And this is what it looks like. The interface looks complicated, and the first time you open it up, you say, "Oh my gosh, what have I got myself into?" But there are lots of tutorials on YouTube for how to use Unity. All right, so this is what Dinosaur Ridge looks like if you go out to Colorado. I've been fortunate to work with Aaron LeCount, who is not only an expert on dinosaurs but also is a gamer. And I'm seeing more and more young paleontologists coming along, and who not only understand the science but also understand the technology and what's available in gaming technology. And so when I started working with Erin, both on the Jurassic and the Cretaceous, she said, okay, here are the dinosaurs that you need to include in these projects, and even gave me suggestions as to which models to purchase, whether they're on the Unity Asset Store or um, Turbo Squid, or what other platforms or other marketplaces there were, which made my job a lot easier to create the software. I don't know how many have used virtual reality, but basically, my simulations work via navigation with the VR controllers. So when you push the controller forward, you go forward. You can also turn right or left. These are rather standard controls in virtual reality. And here I'm going to show you some of the animals that I included in the late Cretaceous simulation. So this is a Torvosaurus, which sort of looks like Triceratops, although actually, and there was some debate as to whether they were related or not. But now pretty much scientists have accepted that they are separate genera. And here's two other late Cretaceous dinosaurs, a Pachycephalosaurus, or the head-butting dinosaur in the foreground, and then a Edmontosaurus or ornithopod dinosaur in the back. And it was an educational experience for me going through and creating these simulations. I knew that T Rex was the dominant meat eater during the late Cretaceous, but I also found out that there was another dinosaur called Nanotyrannus, which was a smaller version. There was some debate about whether these Nanotyrannus was actually a separate genera or not. We now realize that they are separate genera of dinosaurs. The other thing that I found out in the late Cretaceous, of course, everybody knows the raptors from Jurassic Park, but I also learned that there were a lot of modern day organisms that also lived in the late Cretaceous, things like crocodiles, rays, gars, and even small mammals about the size of squirrels existed back then. It wasn't until after the extinction of the dinosaurs that mammals really took off and radiated. All right, so got to say something about the cost. That's something that everybody is concerned about. The late Cretaceous sim, and I did in 2024, was more expensive than Jurassic One, and that was because Erin wanted a lot more realistic dinosaurs in there. In particular, she asked for an Edmontosaurus model that really almost busted the budget at $324, but the whole budget came in under 1,000 at $868. So it was reasonable. I was able to get some money through the Virginia Museum of Natural History to pay for the project. It's always nice. All right, so in April 26, 2024, I decided to release the simulation at a geology conference in Charlottesville, Virginia, during one of the poster sessions. And I got Logan Howell to come up, and he tried it and he demonstrated the VR sim to Mark Carter, who's with the U.S. Geological Survey. And Mark tried it and said, "This is fantastic. You should release it immediately." And he's used the program with his daughter, the VR simulation, said it was fun and educational, so informative. So it's always good to get the blessing of the federal government, so to speak, in a project like this. And once I got that support, I decided to release the VR sim at the Virginia Museum of Natural History during the summer of 2024. And here's the entrance sign to it. Virginia Museum of Natural History does a fantastic uh, session for their fossils. They have a lot of dinosaur material out on display. Their curators are out there. Here you can see some of the material. There's a skull of a dinosaur, I'm not sure which one, and then there's a Stegosaurus plate next to it. So visitors get to see a lot of really good specimens. All right, so Shiloh figured it's going to come up with the first question. So wait, David. By the end of the Cretaceous, had most of the Jurassic dinosaurs died out or adapted with more competition? Yeah, most of the Jurassic dinosaurs we think of, for example, Allosaurus and Stegosaurus, they are gone by the Cretaceous. They're replaced in the Cretaceous by other meat eaters or plant eaters. There are some dinosaurs like ankylosaurs that survived into the Cretaceous. Some of the large plant-eating dinosaurs did as well, but individual species were replaced. And while I was at the dinosaur festival, since they had so much material out, I contacted the curator, and he gave me permission to do 3D scans of some of the dinosaur material we have in the collections area of the Virginia Museum of Natural History. Some of this has already been imported into Second Life. I run three natural history museums in Second Life. There's one based on the Virginia Museum of Natural History. There's one based on the Cincinnati Museum of Natural History. And the latest one that I did for Scientia is the Morrison Museum in Colorado. So, and I've got a lot more material that I can bring into Second Life. It's just a matter of time. But here you see a Tyrannosaurus Rex tooth, I think it is, and then there's a Triceratops horn piece right next to it. And if you'd like LMs to those museums, well, they're on this sim here. Let me know, just IM me, and I'll be happy to share them. All three museums are in the same parcel. Yeah, and Ilsa's saying the World of Tanks scanned Bovington's tanks and they saw a bump in interest. Yeah, one of the things I like to say is the museums that I create here on Second Life are not intended to replace the museums in real life. One of the things that we found from the American Geologic Institute is people that go to a virtual museum get their interest pumped up so much that they want to see the actual real life museum. And I would certainly encourage people to do that. All right, one of the things I like to point out is this was a team effort. There's no way that I'd be able to run these virtual reality simulations at the Museum of Natural History without my teammates. Here you see Brandon on the left. He's a amateur paleontologist in Roanoke. Ethan and Bailey are in the middle. Bailey was actually one of my students at the high school, and then she came back to help me with her boyfriend Ethan. I'm the fourth guy in the row there, and then on the end is Darian Bradley, who was a student. He was in my computer club and also took my earth science class, and then went to Virginia Tech to major in vertebrate paleontology there. So we had a good mix of people that understood the technology and also understood the dinosaur part of it. And here's the way we set up my exhibit at the Virginia Museum for the Dinosaur Festival when we had a whole classroom, which was nice. As guests walked in, Bailey and Ethan greeted them. They explained what we'd be doing today. They passed out pre-quizzes that had 10 questions about the late Cretaceous animals and environments, and we asked them to take the quiz. Some students took it on their own. The younger children were encouraged to allow their parents to help them. So we got a lot of it. We got 110 responses from that. And then after they did the pre-quiz, we put them into the VR headsets. It ran about 6 to 7 minutes where they got to run around and learn about the dinosaurs. As they ran up to a dinosaur, there was a pop-up that appeared, and it gave them information about the dinosaurs. And then after they were done, we asked them to take the same quiz again to see if they had learned anything. And the nice thing was I had Brandon doing the grading. So by having a large enough team, we were able to in real time tell guests what they got on the pre-quiz, what they got on the post-quiz. All that was shared with the families. So within minutes, they were finding out what was going on. I don't know of any other museum exhibitors that tried to do this, where they've tried to assess how much information guests came to a museum with and how much they left with. So all this was compiled, all of it was sent to the education director at the Virginia Museum of Natural History, and I'll be sharing some of that with you today. Yeah, quick feedback as a teacher, always a good idea, Carell. And to be honest, we were overwhelmed. In 2023, we were able to keep up with the flow of guests. In 2024, I was just literally overwhelmed. We had so many people coming to the museum. And unfortunately, I only had two setups working. I'd hoped to get a third up. So what I did was I had Darian's father, Mr. Bradley, take a computer, set it up so that guests could at least see what was in the simulation. So he had large crowds around him. The big surprise to 2024 was that parents wanted their kids in the VR headsets, some as young as 2 years old. I was shocked. And the teachers my team told all the parents, hey, Meta, the parent company that made the headset, the Quest, does not recommend putting kids under 13 into the headset. And parents told us all the same thing. They didn't care. Strap them in. In fact, one of the fun things was they would put the headset on and then they take out the cell phone and they take pictures. So the running joke was, pictures with Santa are dead. It's now, we want a picture of the kid in the VR headset. So, yes, Shiloh brings up a good point. Parents are very supportive of what I'm doing. I had one comment from a parent saying, this should be done in schools. So that was very gratifying. So let's get to the results. Like I said, 111 guests and families were given the pre-quiz. They ran through the VR demo, and then they did the post-quiz. And you might have to cam in a little bit on this poster. The average score on the pre-quiz was 46%, and the average score on the post-test was 78%. So the amount of dinosaur information increased by 32%. Yeah, that is huge. And considering it was a 6 to 7 minute presentation, that's quite a bit. And the other bigger shock that I saw, the average age, we kept track of that for the guests, was 12 years old. And some children as young as 2 were being put into it. I thought that was pushing it a little bit to put 2-year-olds in there. But like I said, that was up to the parents. Lisa's asking, how many of your macros are mobile? I think what you're asking is how many of my simulations are mobile. And unfortunately, at this point, the answer is none. But certainly that's something that I could look into if there was an interest to it. Do I attribute this to experiential learning or mentor interaction? What I would say is, I think there's two things that are going on here. One, dinosaurs are cool. And the people that come to the Virginia Museum Natural History dinosaur festivals, they're ready to learn about dinosaurs. And then when you put them into an immersive environment, like a VR environment, where you're just overwhelmed, I think just really adds to the motivation to try and learn this material. Did you make the concepts more digestible? Charlotte, yes, that's something I want to talk about quite a bit. Is I really feel that with this technology, whether it's Unity or VR, we can get more advanced concepts to younger children. I'm going to give you some examples in that in a minute. I just don't want to get ahead of myself here. All right, so what was the takeaway lesson? The first thing was that my virtual reality simulation has to be shortened. 6 to 7 minutes was just too long. So this year, when I go back to the museum in July, I'm planning on a VR experiments no more than a minute or two, so I can get more guests through. The other thing that I saw was that a lot of the guests were going and seeing all the exhibits, and then they were coming down to, I was in the basement, so they were coming to me last, which was not a good idea, because if they had come to me first, then I could say, hey, we're really overwhelmed, please go see the other exhibits and then come on back. Ariane's asking how many kids can experience per day. It's really a matter of the length of the VR simulation. Like I said, I try and go for about 4 or 5 minutes, which is what Dinosaur Ridge and the museum recommends. I would say we can get a couple of hundred kids through the VR experience. I only had 111 that went through the pre-quiz, the VR, and then the post-quiz. Some people just want to do the VR thing and they didn't want to do the quiz. So I would say about 300 students were able to get through in a 2 day period. Corell is saying, all I need is my kids knowing more about dinosaurs. But Barris, how little I know. I know kids are like that. They learn a lot. Um, okay, so let's go on to the next slide here. All right. I One of the things that's nice about Unity is that you can, like I said, once you create something, you can shoot it out to not only PCs, Macs, mobile, VR. You could do multiplayer games. That's what you're seeing here. So I did play around with a multiplayer version of the Late Cretaceous Sim. And I think I was playing both avatars like this, and I was running around, and what happened is I got stuck. And at first I thought, is this a computer glitch? And then I said, no, not really. I think what I'm seeing here is that this is realistic. If we could go back in time, 87 million years ago to the late Cretaceous, you probably wouldn't really want to do that because it was a marshy environment. If you look down at your feet in real life, you see how the soles of your shoes have such a small cross-sectional area, and the weight of you, I'm not saying you're heavy, the weight of you would push you down into this marsh. And then you got all this vegetation material to trip you up as well. So the simulation, this multiplayer simulation, gave me an insight that I didn't necessarily immediately hit me, that just running around in this environment could be dangerous. You could get caught, and then you're prey to whatever unfriendly predators happen to be in the environment. All right, so the late Cretaceous program that I did in 2024 is going to be greatly expanded in 2025. The dream is to try and release it on Steam. And here's a quick snapshot of what the newest late Cretaceous program will look like. You'll start off in a South Dakota drylands environment. You get to run around. There'll be a geologic map to guide you. You'll see an indicator on there that if you zoom in close, there's a red triangle that represents you. And then you plot up. I've plotted up the location of where dinosaur bones have been found in the past. So that's sort of guide the players where they want to look. So the idea is, I don't want to call this a game. I want to call it a simulation. And I see Cindy Bolero's in the group, so she knows what I'm talking about. I want this to be an educational experience where people that want to become vertebrate paleontologists, they can get a real flavor for what it's like. You know, when you go out in the field, what are the things you have to worry about? One of the things that's going to be in there is property rights. You're going to be limited where you can run in this area to collect dinosaur bones. And if you go outside of the area that you have permission, you'll get warnings on the screen saying, hey, you don't have permission to collect dinosaur bones in this area. And out west, that can be a real tricky business if you don't have the correct rights. There's going to be things in here. Not only do you collect the dinosaur bones, in a minute you're going to see that the player is going to be asked to put them in the right place in the skeleton. And then ultimately we lead into dinosaur classification. Yeah, Shiloh, there's a lot of dinosaurs on private property. And what's happening is, I just talked with Peter Larson. He's the guy that found Sue the T-Rex, and he said, what you do in that case is you cut a deal with the rancher. And for example, in Montana, some ranchers are so cash starved that for $300 a day, they'll let you go on the property and collect dinosaur bones, which I think is a cool option. Or they might say, well, here's a skeleton here. We can't get it out. But if you pay us X thousands of dollars, we'll allow you to excavate it, and then it's yours. You just have to be really careful about who owns the rights. The good news in Montana, Peter was telling me that dinosaur bones are now being considered surficial deposits. That is, the whoever the current owner of that property is has the rights to sell the bones or to give other people the right to find them. And recognition of the property owner, um, well, in many cases, the property owner, yeah, just wants to sell the bones. That's it. All right, so here's another part of the simulation that I'm working on. I'm working with a guy named Quang in Vietnam, and he's come up with a wonderful um, drag and drop exercise. It was actually designed for vehicles, but I modified it to dinosaurs. So I put all the parts or many of the parts of the dinosaur in an inventory, and then what you do is you just drag them on the skeleton. So this is a great way for people to learn about the different parts of the anatomy of a dinosaur. And the beauty of it is when you drag the bones out, what'll happen is where the location is on the skeleton will go glow green. And also, you don't have to be exactly on the right spot for it to drop. There's three settings: easy, medium, and hard. On easy, you just have to be relatively close to the dinosaur and they'll pop onto the correct position. On hard, medium, and hard, you got to be a lot closer. So the first time through, I recommend players, yeah, pick easy so that you can see where these bones are supposed to go. And then as you get better, you click on the gear and you change it to medium or hard. Okay, so in addition to the Cretaceous, the other thing I'm looking at is the Triassic. And so I talked with some folks down in New Mexico, Jenny Borst to be in particular. She worked at Ghost Ranch in New Mexico and gave me some great ideas as to what should go in a Triassic simulation. Yeah, Shiloh, I think, is in Texas, so that's close to you, right? And she suggested these dinosaurs. Coelophysis is a very common dinosaur that you see around there. She also suggested some phytosaurs. These are alligator-looking things. And what you're looking at is I'm going to do a VR simulation for the museum. You'll see a screen capture of that in a minute. But this was actually a multiplayer simulation that I did. And with us today in spirit is Tiffany. She's a grandmother, and one of her granddaughters is here that I'm going to refer to as Arizona Cat Lover. We're going to be very careful about using real life names here of minors. And Arizona Cat Lover has a brother. I don't think he's here today, but you see his avatar and he's running around. And one of the cool things, I logged in with this 5 year old, and he was running around and was playing with the dinosaurs. He was learning his alphabet. So by typing letters on his keyboard, he could get the dinosaur to do different things. So if he typed the J key, it jumped. The dinosaur started to eat. D, it was drinking. So he was starting to learn his alphabet, but also seeing how that affected the dinosaur. And then something happened, which I didn't expect. We were in there one time, and we would spend months. He would come back and he'd say, "Hey, can I play the dinosaur game?" And one of the things that happened was we started playing the dinosaur game, and he goes, "Can we play hide and seek in the simulation?" I said, that is a great idea to apply a real life game to the virtual world. So we started playing hide and seek games. So kudos to him for being creative like that. And Jade saying, could you log in as a dinosaur? The answer, Jade, is yes. And there's actually a simulation I'm thinking of, a Path of the Titans, that does a really good job of that. And I hate trying to sort of reinvent the wheel, but if that's what you want to do, look into Path of the Titans, because you can log in, you can go on hunts, it's multiplayer. That's an awesome program. But yes, in Unity, I could add a dinosaur avatar. Shiloh's asking by Triassic, what has happened to the types of dinosaurs that were alive then Yeah. There was a big extinction at the end of the Triassic, Shiloh. So a lot of the dinosaurs like Coelophysis in the you don't see in the Jurassic or the Cretaceous, and that's something that I want to build into this simulation. The education director has said, please emphasize dinosaurs lived during different geologic time periods, and Steven Spielberg has not done a great service to vertebrate paleontologists because he mixes them all up and kids get the idea they all lived at the same time and they didn't. That's something we're going to be looking into. Like I said, I also did a multiplayer simulation of the late Cretaceous, this South Dakota field area. Jenny Borst logged in with me. Here you see a screen capture from that. And she gave me some suggestions as to how to improve the Triassic simulation. So that's one of the nice things about creating multiplayer simulations is that you can go in with different environments and get feedback on the program when you're inside the game. And Curious is saying, let me tell you how astronomers feel about the cinematic representations of the universe. Okay, George, I can just imagine what that's going to be like. And this is what one of my latest simulations. I actually went up to Connecticut and went to Dinosaur State Park, and they are interested in me doing a simulation during the Triassic time, but they want me to use the Unreal game engine. And so I started playing around with that. And there are some advantages to Unreal. I'm a little more comfortable with Unity, but the ability to model the terrain is a little better. Here, what you're seeing is in the Triassic, Pangaea, the supercontinent, is splitting apart. North America is separating from Africa. And as it does so, you create these rift valleys. And in the rift valleys, you create these lakes. Some of it were pretty marshy because we have coal deposits that form in these things around Richmond. And so what you see here is a Coelophysis dinosaur, and then there's some phytosaurs in there as well. All right, so some conclusions here. Virtual reality VR sims are very popular with students, and parents can greatly increase the learning experience. I admit the technology is not cheap. When I buy a VR headset, I'm looking at around $1,500 for the gaming rig, the cable, and the headset. But I really think, and I've tried to make the argument that in education, we want the biggest bang we can get. And from the results that I'm seeing, students do really enjoy learning in a virtual reality environment. I'm not an advocate of increasing taxes. I think that we could reallocate a lot of the millions of dollars spent on standards testing to make more efficient and effective teaching strategies and get better resources for teachers. One of the things I noticed as a teacher is as I went through my 33 years, my budgets were shrinking, whether it was for lab materials or technology. One of the things I want to ask is if you want access to my programs, all you got to do is ask. Go to my website, evwllc.com. I'm going to put that in local chat again so you can just copy it. I'm in the process. Hopefully this week I'm going to redo that website. On there is my contact information if you don't want to type out I'll put it here anyway. There you go. So you got both my email and website. Feel free to contact me. A lot of these programs are in my Google Drive, and I'll be happy to send them out to you. So just give me some feedback, and just let me know what you need. Do you want the VR version? Do you want a PC version? Do you want a multiplayer version? I've been asked recently for a Mac version. I could make one. I don't have it yet. And shows that you did a similar module exposures. Yeah, the intent was to use the Jurassic simulation at Dinosaur Ridge in Colorado, and they used it for a while. I don't know if that kiosk is still up, but that was what they told me they were planning on doing.
Did you find a difference in the retention of students that were using the VR between the Colorado students, or did you feel that you had improved, or you learned something after working with the Colorado students that you learned and you applied it when you went to the Arizona students? I mean, because you've got two different groups of students.
Yeah, hold on, Shiloh. You're breaking up, but I got the gist of it. First of all, I never actually taught students in Colorado. Aaron LeCount did, and we didn't get feedback like I did in Virginia, where there was like a pre-test, a post-test, and then. So I don't know what effect it had on the Colorado students, but that's something I could suggest to Aaron, see if she'd be interested. I think she's got the quiz and she could try it, but that'd be interesting to find out. All right, you'll notice that there are a couple of posters. Um, okay, we got another question here. Can you transfer models from Unity to Unreal? The answer is absolutely yes. Okay, one of the things that I learned with playing around those two, they're both set up on FBX models. So if I bought something for Unity, it was just a matter of dragging it in onto Unreal. The big problem I had with Unreal is the animations weren't firing. I'm not sure why that is. Unity, I'm so used to, and easily get the animations. I finally figured out the animation controller. I haven't figured out how to do that on Unreal. I've only spent a couple of months in Unreal as opposed to probably about 10 or 12 years in Unity. So maybe somebody here knows better than I about how to do that. All right, I want to say a little bit about the posters that I threw up. I was almost tempted to redo this entire talk, but I know some people hadn't heard what I had to say for the Virtual Worlds Best Practice in Education conference. So I decided to repeat what I did in April. On the left-hand side of the screen here is a forest, and you see some animals in it, and then there's a couple of avatars run around. And that entire scene, that forest scene, was created by a 12-year-old Arizona cat lady, and she should be watching this presentation now. So I'm hoping she might want to throw some comments in nearby chat, or Tiffany, if you want to come and voice, I would certainly welcome that. But I am just so impressed that a 12-year-old sat down with me and was able to figure out Unity and actually start creating something, their own virtual world. And I say that because I think back to my experience as, when I taught for 33 years, and I can't think of any other industry that's so resistant to change as K-12 education. When I first started teaching in 1988, it was lecture, multiple choice tests, and so on. And then when I retired, it was the same thing. It was lecture and the same sort of multiple choice test for standardized testing. And yeah, we had Promethean active boards come in. We have Chromebooks come in. We started using LMSs, learning management systems. But the philosophy that I started to see towards the end of my career about, George is saying not too much different higher ed. Sorry to hear that, George. Towards the end of my career, administrators started to talk about how we need to focus on collaboration, creativity, communication. And yet I didn't see any effort on the part of administration to really push those new learning styles. I'm more impressed with Arizona cat lady. She got together with her cousin, and just spontaneously they go into Roblox and they're starting to build together on different tablets. I thought that was so impressive. They're getting it. They're figuring out what's important. This creativity collaboration has to be online. They have to be able to work. When I do these simulations, I'm working with a guy in Vietnam, or I'm working with people in Colorado, and I'm doing it all from New York. That's the future. All right, we're getting a few more questions. Dave, can you briefly talk about your website? Educational Virtual Worlds is the name of my company. I have a wonderful webmaster, Yvonne DeBandy. You may have heard about her already. She does all the, getting me room on cyberspace and so on. And the answer, Ariane's asking, how about making a moving dinosaur with AI? Absolutely. In one of the simulations that I did for the Jurassic, I was trying to code the Allosaurus, and I tried to make it so that the guests could find these dinosaurs quickly. And I couldn't find the Allosaurus. I created it. I knew where it was. So I decided I'm going to use AI. When I log in, Unity has a really great set of AI commands in their library. So I said to the dinosaur, I coded, as soon as I log in, I want you to find me. All right. And it did. All right. And then I said, well, I'm going to put a GPS in it. So When it finds me, it stops 5 meters away from me. And then after that, I said, I'm going to make this realistic. I'm going to set it so that unless I'm within 20 meters of the dinosaur, it's not going to come towards me. And I asked the curator if that's realistic. He said, yeah, Allosaurus did not have great vision, especially back in the Jurassic with fog and so on. 20 meters would have been the max. So we're getting using AI, we're getting insights into how these things lived that I normally wouldn't appreciate. It'll say in the new words, get new grants. Okay. Um, I want to say a little bit more about education. I already made, being on the soapbox, I already made comments about we need more funding in this. We need to get these kids thinking about being creative. I want to show you some other uses of this unity of virtual worlds and so on. And I hope one of the themes that you've heard, the threads running through this, is that we can use this technology to teach kids faster. We can use this technology to give them a deeper understanding of the science and the math that's going involved. So I direct your attention to the poster on the right-hand side of the screen panel. And I was talking one day with Arizona cat lover. She was sick. She couldn't go to school. So I get on the phone with her and I said, what are you learning in science class? And she goes, we're learning about potential and kinetic energy. So I said, okay, let's make a model. And in fact, if you look through the Arizona science standards, they talk about the importance of models. So she goes into Unity, goes in the terrain editor, starts making hills of different height, and then models in a sphere, and then drops them from different distances. So I think we did 100 meters, 200 meters, 300 meters. And then as she's dropping the objects, I time them. So we were able to calculate the fall distance for different heights that these are dropped. And we even started talking about, a hypothesis. I said to her, do you think that if we double the height that you drop a sphere from, it's going to double the time it takes to hit? And she goes, yeah. Well, it turns out by just looking at our data from this simulation that didn't work out. And then we talked a little bit about the physics. I had to be careful because she's in sixth grade. But I talked a little bit about, how it actually works. But these sort of simulations that we can create in Unity with minimal effort. I mean, I think this took 15 minutes to throw together. We'll get them started, okay, in understanding more advanced concepts in physics. I know, George, you're going to be happy for me to make this comment. Physics and chemistry, some of the more advanced, harder sciences. And Arizona cat lover just told me she's interested in becoming an engineer in the future, and kudos for that. We certainly need more female engineers and young ladies entering into the STEM areas. I want to say one more thing that I just forgot about. Look at the poster again that she did of the forest with the animals that are in there. One of the things that I read when I started looking through the Arizona science standards, terms like models, scale, proportion kept popping up in the SOLs. And I'm not sure how teachers teach those concepts. I'd love for her to come into either voice or type in local chat if she can tell me what her teachers asked them to do to learn this. But those of you that are in Second Life know that it's real easy to control scale. I threw a model here of one of the oldest fossils found in Virginia. And you all know that it's real easy for me to scale this thing up as big or as small as I'd like to make it. I can change proportions as well on this, so I can shrink it. So it's real easy to teach the concepts in a virtual world that, that Arizona and other states want these kids to learn. And I'm getting some more comments here. I'm going to slow down a little bit here. I got to go back here a little bit. Go. Yeah. Curious George raises a really good comments. The kids are digital natives. They grew up at Minecraft, Roblox. These are tools the kids are using to be creative, and kudos to them that they're playing around with these because I really think that's a better way of learning and preparing for online collaboration, creativity, and so on. Yeah, George is saying that the universities are unwilling to experiment, and I want to say a little bit about that because I didn't get it until I talked to a principal about, why is it that they're not willing to do more sort of experimentation in schools, sort of research and development? And the answer is simple. As an administrator, they are responsible for large sums of money, and my concern here is administrators tell me we've got to be careful if we put 50 or $100,000 in a project, and we don't see the big bang behind it. We're responsible. Our heads are on the chopping block, so to speak. So they're administrators, principals, and so on are more likely to go with key, what do they call it, tried and true solutions, turnkey solutions, what they like to talk about, where somebody else tried it in another school and they got really good results, and that's when they're willing to try it. Okay. Now, one of the things I want to say, um, because we're talking about virtual reality, is my big concern is in 2019, Unity switched from a really simple, easy to use VR system to a more complicated one. They went to the XR rig, and I've had a lot of problems with that. I finally got it to work. I'm finally able to create VR simulations with it. The advantage of VR in the new XR system is you have much more control. I can control every button on the controller, so that's always nice. I had trouble doing that in the old version. But in terms of teaching VR, it's a lot trickier. In terms of, and I don't want to offend, I see Cindy Bolero is in the group. What I would really wish there exists, and maybe Cindy, you know of something, but it would really be nice if there was a template in Unity that allowed children especially, to create in Unity and and just push out a whole VR virtual world simulation. Do you know of anything? I know years ago there was Extremality, which allowed you to create scenes and go from single player to multiplayer. And I don't want to go through the whole thing about Extremality. That was never updated. I did like that you could drop scenes in Extremality and go from single to multiplayer easily. You could drop avatars in. Do you know of any simple template that allows you to create multiplayer simulations with the newer versions of Unity? Because that would really help, I think, with a lot with what I'm doing. Or maybe George has some ideas. Not really. Oh, that's worrisome. And is Tiffany, is Arizona Cat Lover there? Is she still watching this? Okay, great. Would you ask her what her teachers used to, to learn about modeling and proportion scale? Did they do like dioramas, for example, in class? Because I know that's the old school way of doing things. No, they didn't. So that amazes me because how if you don't do things like a diorama, you remember when we used to take the fish tank or a box and then you put the animals in and so on. I mean, that's a really old school way of creating models and worrying about scale and so on. So I'm not sure how these kids are achieving the science standards that that the state wants them to. To me, it's no brainer. You want to use a program like Unity to create models and scale and proportion. And that's all I have. Yeah.
I have two questions. Uh, uh, if I may ask, one is very basic because you said at the Dinosaur Ridge they found lots of dinosaur bones. Um, was it just a collection of layer upon layer of dinosaurs from the different epochs that you found? And then I have a second question about your work with paleo longitudes and potentially using VR to help exemplify what a paleolongitude tells you about plate tectonics and earth science. Maybe you could speak to both of
Two
those.
different questions. So let's pick the first one. All right. Dinosaur Ridge has dinosaurs from two time periods, from the Jurassic and also from the Cretaceous. Most of the dinosaur bones are from the Jurassic. And when you look at the Cretaceous, it's mostly dinosaur footprints. And then you get some marine deposits in there, so you get some marine organisms. You don't get, unless you get closer to Denver, then you can get dinosaur bones. When they were excavating for the football field in Denver, they found a whole Triceratops skeleton. How cool is that? There's a golf course there where they've got fern fossils from the Cretaceous as well as Triceratops footprints. So you can play golf and look at dinosaur stuff within like 10 feet of each other. Yeah, that's what I was told, is almost a whole Triceratops skeleton. So there's that. The paleo longitudes, that's a separate story. I would not use virtual reality for that. That was done with just collecting a lot of data on the distribution of clam species in the modern day world and then doing some math with it, actually using simple regression analysis and then applying it to clam data in the past. And I can, if anybody that's interested in that, I can share the paper that appeared in Paleobiology in 2014 and go into all the details. Just let me know, email me, and I'll be happy to send it to you. And that's all I have, unless there's other questions. Or George, Shiloh, did you want to move this to the social area? I'll pick up this, but thank you so much for allowing me to present here, George. It's always fun to present on Scientia.
Well, thank you, and let's thank Di again for this wonderful talk.
Thank you all for coming.